guys, good Saturday morning to you. It's April the 27th, and I'm going to talk to you about Fisker for a little bit, tell you what's on my mind, and offer maybe some suggestions, maybe some advice, but now you take any of this at your own risk. So let's get the YouTube disclaimers out of the way. None of my content constitutes professional advice. Viewers that follow any advice, suggestions, statements, content, anything from this channel, do so at their own risk because you are responsible for your own actions. All right, let's jump right into my thoughts this Saturday morning. What's on my mind? We know that we need a miracle. Clearly, I've been hoping for a miracle, praying for a miracle, and I hope that Fisker survives. This video is more along the lines of what's happened recently and what I think is most likely to happen going forward. Now I'm going to read just a little bit here from my notes. I don't have hardly anything as far as the notes. I just want to read a very specific section. Jeez. Okay. So here we go. Pursuant to the terms, I'm reading from the 8K, which I've done other videos over. Pursuant to the terms of the forbearance agreement, if the investor has not accepted an offer for the purchase of its notes by 12:01 a.m. prevailing Eastern Time on April the 25th, 2024, Mr. Healy will be immediately and automatically replaced by John D. DiDottano as Chief Restructuring Officer. So I thought that we might get an 8K over that, but I guess, one is probably not needed in the sense that we already have that in front of us. Because that date came and went, and we didn't hear anything from Fisker. Now, what we did hear, though, is that 4 OEM automotive manufacturers, original equipment manufacturers, are interested in purchasing Fisker. So my two thoughts revolve around both of these statements and everything that has happened leading up to this moment in time. Let's deal with the first one first. I have to assume that Healy is out and DiDottano is now in. Why do I think that? This is my best guess on that. I think that because had we gotten the note holder to accept an offer, I think Fisker would have rejoiced and shared that news with us. This makes me think that the note holder simply did not accept that offer, and I have to assume that this John D. DiDottano is now our new CRO, our new Chief Restructuring Officer. So that makes me think that we're probably heading in a different direction now than we were under Healy. My speculation with Healy was that we were trying to get the note holder to agree, to a less amount, and looks like the note holder did not agree to that. That's my best guess. It's pure speculation. You guys know as much as I do if you follow the news. All I know is what's public. So I have to assume that Healy is out and DiDottano is in. Now, what does that mean? That probably means that we're, probably means that we are in a short leash before we would file Chapter 7 or Chapter 11. Now, I don't think we're going to file Chapter 7. Because if you file Chapter 7, it's just totally over for Fisker. Fisker will never exist as we know it under Chapter 7. So that made me think we're on a very short leash for bankruptcy. Now, Chapter 11 is a very different animal than Chapter 7. You just never know how Chapter 11 is going to play out. The shares will trade. They may trade up quite a bit. They may trade down quite a bit. And you may have the ability to make some money on those swings. And that's actually what I would encourage you to do if you want to play this out to the very end. I would encourage you to just, sell on the upswings, buy on the dips if you're willing to take that risk. But you have to be willing to accept a zero-sum game here this late in the game. So please keep that in mind. Now I'm going to talk about the automotive manufacturers. I did a video over the OEMs, and no matter how you slice that, that is good news that we have 4 automotive manufacturers interested in Fisker. And I so hope that Fisker survives and somebody picks up Fisker and continues to build these excellent Oceans because they have so much potential. I love driving that thing. The problem with this news, though, this late in the game, is we're bumping right up against time. And time is not on our side here. So our automotive manufacturer is going to be interested in coming in and scooping up Fisker this late in the game. Well, had we not had the fiasco with the 10Q, I think our odds of getting purchased would have been much, much greater. You have to go back now and you have to think about the third quarter of Fisker when we missed our 10Q. When that happened, we only had, and I'm ballparking it, okay? We only had roughly 350 million shares at that time. I'm not missing it by much, maybe 10 or 20 million on either side, but we didn't have a lot of shares. And after we missed the 10Q, that set off a cascading event. I even submitted that question on the SAY platform. And that was even, if you go back and listen to the conference calls, that question was even asked on the SAY platform. And that set off a cascading event to where now the note holder, I shouldn't say now, back then the note holder could just dilute the daylights out of us, and they did. And so our share count is almost 4 times what it was then. So if you start looking at our liabilities on the 10K, which recently came out, I'm looking at roughly $1.8 billion in liabilities. So if we were to get a buyout, for anything to be left over for the shareholders, you're going to have to be at least $2 billion. Now, from my perspective, that's actually not a bad deal. You know, you scoop up Fisker for $2 billion, but that wouldn't leave hardly anything left over for the shareholders. Maybe they come in, maybe they pay that amount. Maybe they pay $1 billion. Maybe they pay $3 billion and we get lucky. But I think the odds of that are very, very slim this late in the game. These automotive manufacturers might just wait until, you know, our hands are forced to file bankruptcy and then come in and try to swoop up the pieces that they want. It's anybody's guess. Once that happens, you know, it's pretty much turned over to the courts, and as shareholders, it's really out of our hands on how this plays out. So what I'm thinking right now is it's a zero-sum game in the sense that we're either going to score a little bit with Fisker, or it's going to end up being a zero-sum game. So you have to be willing to take that risk. Are you willing to take that risk right up until the very end? That's what the question becomes. I think if we had more time and we had more money, I think we could probably get an OEM to come in and purchase us. But if you think about it, if you think historically here, we've already been down that road. You know, Fisker had been working with several automotive manufacturers and none of them purchased. None of them. And then the last man standing was Nissan. So that makes me think that Nissan would probably be the most likely interested partner now, but do they come in now this late in the game and scoop us up? It's anybody's guess, okay? The problem though is that the clock is not on our side. So a decision would have to be made fairly soon, possibly in days, possibly in weeks, but we know that we don't have more than a month. So where am I going with all of this? I'm going that you need to have a game plan, you need to have a strategy, you need to have an exit strategy if you're interested in exiting. So what I personally did was I now just have shares in my Roth. I still have all of my Leaps. I had purchased back a bunch of shares. I traded those around just a little bit. I did exit those shares Friday because when you start thinking about it, we simply didn't get the reaction from the market from these 4 automotive manufacturers. So it makes you think that they may not pick us up. So what I still have a significant amount of shares in my Roth. And my plan is, since that's a tax-free account, My plan is to trade the daylights out of that. Now, I'm never going to come on here and give advice, okay, saying, I'm going to buy at X, sell at X. Oh, heck no. I am not getting into that. I am just providing my thoughts here because there might be plenty of time to still make money, even if, let's assume we get bought out. Okay, then my Roth shares do whatever they do, and that's great. If we don't get bought out, then we're most likely going to file for Chapter 11. I don't think we'll file for Chapter 7, so time's not on our side, whether that's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We know we probably don't have more than 3 weeks. So if we're not purchased over the next 3 weeks, and we know that from the 10K that we only had roughly 30 days before we would file bankruptcy. We know this. This is not new news. So I'm just making this video for my audience to let you guys know that you're going to have to decide how you're going to play this. So what I'm going to do personally is I'm going to try to make a little money on the swings in my Roth account, trade the daylights out of it, and hope for the best. I hope Fisker survives this. I truly do. You'd be hard pressed to find somebody that loves this company more than me, even though it's financially decimated me in the process. Okay, so I do want the ocean to survive. I would love to see the company survive, but you guys are going to have to decide, what do you do? And that's what I have personally decided to do. I made a little money on the upswing, because I was buying shares at 2, I was buying shares at 3. But when you look at what little I made against what I have lost a tremendous amount of money here, because I always believed, and I'm being just opening up with you guys, I'm just sharing. My plan was to always just collect as many shares as I could over the 3 or 4 years that it took Fisker to get up, get running, get oceans out, start selling them. And then I expected, a fairly decent run in the share price, because that's what companies do, right? You see that they're going to survive. You see that they are eventually going to become cash flow positive. You see that they're eventually going to make a profit. And so my intentions the whole time was, if we got a really big run, to sell, a very small portion of my shares for some fun money. That never happened. So my plan then became revolving around just collecting as many shares as I could and selling calls on them. But I can't sell calls anymore. We're on the OTC, so that totally removes that. So it put me in a tough box to be in as far as selling calls. So now the only thing that I can truly hope for is a buyout, or to trade the daylights out of it in my Roth as a tax-free account, and try to make a little money back there. And even if we go to Chapter 11, the shares should trade, at least for a while. And I've seen strange things happen. When a company goes Chapter 11, the shares may rally and they may go straight to zero. So you guys are just going to have to decide. We might be looking at 6 cents today, 1 cent tomorrow, 12 cents the next day. It's tough, man. This has been a roller coaster of a ride. And I just want you guys to be prepared for this, no matter how this goes down. So if you have any really good companies that you are interested in, maybe share them at the bottom. Now, personally, I'm very interested in Fisker. I think that's dead obvious to anybody that's ever watched my channel. And I try to stay as honest and as truthful, and I try to stay as grounded as possible, because we have to accept, as investors, that zero is always the bottom. People would always ask me on StockTwits, what's the bottom? What's the bottom? What's the bottom? And I always said, zero is the bottom. That's the only true bottom that we have. So I hope Fisker survives. I hope they get a buyer. And if a buyer comes in and it looks good, I'll be back and I'll be happy as can be. And don't get the wrong idea here. The shares that I have in my Roth are rather significant. Are they significant at 0.06 or 0.04? Oh, heck no. But back in the day, you know, we were trading at $15 a share, $20 a share. At one time, we were $28 a share. Were those shares significant at those numbers? Oh, absolutely. And I never like to discuss share count anyway because it's only relevant to your net worth. I could make up a number and say I have X amount of shares or I invested X amount in Fisker. All I can say is I invested a heck of amount of money for my net worth. And I was swinging for the fences, and it looks like we've struck out. So we're just going to have to see. My main goal here is I would really like to see Fisker survive. So hopefully an OEM comes in and scoops us up. And if not, hopefully in Chapter 11, assuming we were to end up there, hopefully somebody purchases the IP to Fisker and sees fit for Fisker to survive. So that's all I got to say today, guys. Now, what I will continue to do is I will continue to update this channel. I've enjoyed the audience that has grown here. And if you have suggestions for this channel, just let me know. I love the Ocean. I love driving it. It's a great machine, and I just want to see it continue. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Thanks for joining in. And if you're enjoying my content, just hit the like button and consider subscribing. And hopefully this channel can be around for a very long time and Fisker survives. Until next time.